All right. Thanks for 3 amazing presentations. We only have about 10 minutes for questions, and while people are raising their hands, let me just say my own perception is that the talks answered kind of 3 different aspects of collective intelligence, where Mark was talking about sort of what is this community about, and Nosh was talking about like who do I want to work with, and I think Hila was talking about who am I professionally, which are 3 very interesting aspects of collective intelligence systems. With that, I hope some people got the mics for questions. There's one coming your way. And please don't forget to introduce yourselves, even if you spoke before.
Can the speakers throw light on what kinds of measures have been defined or established for collective intelligence of an organization? What kind of work has been done on that?
You're talking about how to measure collective intelligence in organizations?
Yeah. What kind of definition of these? You've got a group of people working on a problem solving or something like that. And the idea is that if more good people come together, you have a better problem-solving capability. Now, what kinds of measures, call it quantification, what kind of measures have been established for defining the collective intelligence of a group, an organization?
Can I hijack this question a little bit? Because I believe we have had these discussions starting at the birth of collective intelligence community, and we have paper by Tom Malone and Inta Wule spelling this out for teams. But I think an interesting question, variant of it, if you don't mind, for Nosh, is how your recommender system was actually making these recommendations, because presumably that you use some measure of collective intelligence.
Yeah, so let me use that to clarify something. There was no intelligence in the recommender system, because what it was doing was just basically taking people's queries and then using the data that was there to essentially give back a search result on the basis of what they said. So for example, if my colleague Aaron Shaw said that he was an expert on peer production networks, and that was his self-reported data in there. And then if Hila comes in and says, I want to look for somebody who's an expert on peer production, then the recommendation would show Aaron's name there. Now, it can be a much more complicated recommendation system, because you can be saying, I want somebody who's good in this, but also who has a similar personality to me, and who's popular amongst a lot of people. And so you can make that a more complex query, but then still the search results comes out automatically from those results.
Can you say a few words maybe about your prior research, where I know you looked at effectiveness of teams based on
Right, so the part of it is that we know that, so the second part of what you're saying, Natalia, is that we could actually have essentially and there is a version of that we have. It's called, I call it the I'm feeling lucky button on Google, where you just press the button and it'll assemble the team for you. And there is a lot of work that has been done that shows that, for example, individuals who have had prior collaborations with each other are more likely not only to form teams, but form teams that are successful, while people who have, for example, in research, the research community, people who cite each other a lot are in fact more likely to form teams, but they are less likely to be successful. Because if people are citing each other, it means they're not citing different literatures, and sometimes innovation comes from exactly citing different literatures. So part of the goal here is to have people put in their own queries, but then see which ones are more successful than others down the stream, so that you can build more intelligent matchmaking systems than what we are currently implementing in this version of My Dream Team.
Thanks. Given that we're out of time, I just would recommend that if people are new to our community, the science paper by Woolley et al. Provides some measures of collective intelligence in groups, so we're probably easily accessible online.
Yeah. This question is for Hila. So interesting process you described. Thank you very much. I would like to hear your comment on the role that actually human development and maturity played in the shift from what I would call status-based thinking to goal-based thinking.
Can you tell me more about that transition, that shift that you think from status-based?
Yeah, so status-based thinking is we're embarrassed because this other dude who's out there in the middle of nowhere doesn't know anything, and now all of a sudden they made the shift to goal-based thinking, which is now we have a combined, coherent perspective that enables us to move the field and do wonderful things. I mean, did you? And the thing is I think this is a human development thing that's going on there. So I was just curious if you had any observations.
That's a great question. So my initial inclination was to try to, run all kind of hypotheses of what is unique about these people that were able to go through these processes, you said, and focus about the goal and not about the status or how it's threatening them. It was not related to how collaborative these people were. I can tell you what it was not related to gender or age or tenure or their type of professional disciplines. Initially, people told me these are engineers versus scientists or bioengineer. The only thing that I did, and I kept on digging because people kept on asking me, and I looked at their professional history development. What I did found that the people that were refocusing their identity and able to think about the goal and the why are those that throughout their work had to change between disciplines, between units, between jobs versus, so I call it kind of that type of professional development versus vertically. The people that stayed vertically within the same discipline, within the same work. So I think, someone asked me, what does it mean that professional history development shaped them into be more flexible cognitively and work-wise? Mm-hmm. Or do people that are more flexible to begin with cognitively wise choose that type of career path? Okay, happy to hear.
We only have 2 minutes, so we have a question over there if you have a mic.
I'm Carlos Parra, and this question is for Mark. Following up on the measures question, how was the link established between the Podesta emails and the Pizzagate and then the action taken?
So tomorrow.
It's very heavily contested, actually. So there have been massive numbers of articles, both in the news and in the academy, about the influence of various factors, including Facebook feeds and the Podesta emails and Russian hacking, and a new paper comes out pretty much every couple of days on this. I'm happy to talk to you about the various details, but it's still very heavily contested. We'll probably never really know what actually happened. I'm pretty sure we can't do time travel and do an A/B experiment.
So we have time for maybe one more question.
Hey, this is Lisa Yu from Bosch Research. I have a question for Hila. So in the end of your talk, you talk about the problem formulation, and in the beginning you talk about domain boundaries, right? You did this like a nice field observations. I wonder whether you can share any more your thoughts regarding how do you actually get people to formulate their problem in the way anybody can understand, like a 5-year-old or janitor who know nothing about what NASA's doing and what Mars is about. Like usually people, they stop talking the moment you heard about Mars or quantum theory, right? Like I wonder, how do people have trouble trying to figure out the terms to talk to other people? Is that something you can do yourself? Because as the problems owner, you probably have this curse of knowledge. You don't know what other people know or don't know about the problem you have.
That's a great question. So it's almost this kind of catch-22, right? Like you yourself as an expert for so many years see the problem in the way you see it. How can you write it or think about it differently if you are seeing it through your eyes? I think it's something that can be done. So I have coded those changes and I looked at the text. So I literally kind of do a lot of text coding and comparison. And I see that it is about the words and it is about how you write it. I think it's something that can be trained and can be taught and is opposite to the way we're training people today. Across professions, we are training for more and more specialization and jargon and using things in a more encrypted way for people outside. And it's even a part of your power and status to write things in a way that no one else can understand. And I think it's bad for innovation. And I think it is possible to do it. So I have those practices in my working paper that I'm happy to share that I'm working on. And I see, and we're now doing a field experiment. We're trying to actually see, can we also intervene, or is it something cognitively very limited? And I think the crowd can actually help. So collective intelligence in that sense can help the experts kind of break from their fixation. So I'm happy to talk about more.
That's a great way to end our panel. And next, the exciting poster sessions. This is one conference where you may learn a ton from posters, so I hope you don't skip them. Thank you.